Hey guys, it's me, Ivy, and today I am going to talk about um the danger of anime waifus. Now, I'm not saying that if you have one, you're a bad person because I have several. I'm just saying the dangers of it. Before I start, I just want to show you I got my first album. It's by The Cavemen. I will link their channel down below. They are a band from New Zealand, and I actually had the opportunity to see them live during their US tour right before COVID happened. And I met them, and they're really nice people, and they've got some interesting music if you like, kind of like, indie type punk rock and. Ooh. Oh my gosh. This is like old school where it actually has the lyrics on the inside of the album, which is kind of fun. My aunt got that for me for a late Christmas present, I believe. So yeah. And then I also, but I'll shout out another day, I also got myself a Pee-wee doll. But that all aside, today we are going to talk about the danger of anime waifus. And I know I'm fat. I know I'm fat. But we're not going to talk about that either. So, I'm going to link the channel down below because I can't think of the name of the girl, but she talked about in a previous video, she's a cosplayer, and she talks about like pop culture and stuff on how the death of the manic pixie dream girl. And she also talked about, was that her? I think that was her. It was her where she also talked about um Born Sexy Yesterday, and or there, if it was someone else, I'll link their channel down below as well. But it's kind of like where is like another, there are the two versions of like, that were both kind of dangerous. One is the manic pixie dream girl and one is the Born Sexy Yesterday. I'm going to kind of like generally go over those, and then I'm going to kind of lead into the dangers of like the anime waifu. When we talk about the manic pixie dream girl, we talk about a girl that she has all of the qualities that would forward progress the story to the male's benefit. She's normally quirky, she's different, she's optimistic, she's into all of the unique things that normally the male is into. We think about, Ramona from Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which is one of my favorite movies. Most manic pixie dream girls, I don't mind them, because they're part of entertainment values. And people are saying that, like, oh, that's kind of all gone away, and now we're getting less of a manic pixie dream girl. But really, in reality, what it is that the manic pixie dream girl and the Born Sexy Yesterday, which Born Sexy Yesterday is the idea that it's a a child type character in the body of a full grown woman. Whether she's an AI robot who's just trying to understand the world, or a creation, made by the government. A big example is that chick from that movie with Bruce Willis. I can't think of what it's called, but basically it's a girl that like doesn't know anything. She's new to the world, she's discovering things, and she might as well be a child because of how inexperienced and naive and innocent she is, but she's somehow in a grown woman's body. I feel like that is another side of the anime waifu. Now, I know that there's like the different types. There's the yandere, there's the dere, there's the tsundere, and all of that. But I noticed that the main ones that people really seem to be obsessed with are the ones that take on these certain qualities. I think a big one, what I notice in anime a lot, this is huge in Violet Evergarden, and it's also huge in Sword Hero or Shield Hero, not Sword Hero. Yeah, Shield Hero. Yeah, Shield Hero. And then also a little bit we see that in Seven Deadly Sins, where the girl the girl is just so she feels like she owes the male hero her life. Normally, the male hero has done something to help her out. He's saved her in some way, he's rescued her in some way, and she feels that she owes her life to him. And we see that now. The one that really bothers me a little bit is the one in Seven Deadly Sins, because he saves Elizabeth, right? Um, fucking what's his name? Meliodas. He saves Elizabeth, right? While she's asleep, he you could say he sexually assaults her. He's touching her boobs and her body, and while she's asleep, so obviously she's not consenting to this. Maybe they had a romantic thing before. It's not really implied that they have. It's implied more that they never met each other, and while she's asleep, he's touching her and her body and being sexual with her. He's not having sex with her, but he's, definitely, touching her without consent. But when she wakes up, she's not like, "Hey, get your hands off my body." She's like, "You saved me, my hero." And she just absolutely, fawns over him. And I thought that was kind of odd. I mean, I liked Meliodas as a character because I thought he was kind of awkward, and he's kind of trying to figure life out, and he's just kind of this guy that doesn't realize he's like a fucking god in a way, and he's just trying to figure shit out. And which I thought that part of him was interesting, but I thought that it was really weird and kind of creepy that he was touching her while she was asleep, but yet she wakes up and she still, adores him. The example of Violet Evergarden, that she fucking loses her shit when she finds out that this guy has died, and that she's completely in denial, and that they don't even want to tell her because she's just so caught up in this guy, that she doesn't know anything else. And then with the rise of the Shield Hero, he kind of rescues that Raftalia, and Raftalia has been kind of enslaved because she's this weird hybrid of a rat, human, whatever the fuck she is, and he saves her, and so she's just like, "Okay, I owe you my life." And in that aspect is kind of endearing because he doesn't have anybody else. It's yeah, she's like, "Oh, you saved me, you're the only thing I have," but at the same time, he's in the same position. He doesn't have anyone else but her, and she doesn't have anyone else but him, so it's not as bad. So even though she's like, "Oh, I owe you my life," it's not like he's this big hot shot that's just everybody loves him the way Meliodas was. In that aspect, everybody hated him, and he was a loser, and he was in a place where he had nobody else. So in that aspect, I think it's a good kind of equal relationship with them. But I think generally overall the tone of the anime waifu is they are girls that cannot exist. And I'm not saying that oh, it's any different with the husbandos or anything else, but I do feel like anime is written for a male audience. It is written primarily to entertain males. I do think obviously there are female, anime fans, but I think that the demographic is men or boys or whatever. And I think that the reason there's a danger in anime waifus is because it has replaced the manic pixie dream girl and the born sexy yesterday. So we have the manic pixie dream girl, which I see anime waifus, their main purpose is to move the story forward, so that the guy can reach development, growth, whatever. And you very, very rarely see that happen with the female characters, except for maybe Sailor Moon, which is honestly the exact same thing, except Tuxedo Mask is the manic pixie dream boy. Tuxedo Mask isn't this whole thing where he has all of this development or whatever. He's the manic pixie dream boy that just moves the story forward for the girls. But with most other animes, it's the other way around. So then we have that, and normally she's super excited. I know, oh man, I don't even want to bring this up because it's such a depressing movie, but it's called I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. There's this girl that she's got a terminal illness, and she doesn't have very long to live. And it kind of that same idea. It's almost like an anime version of The Fault in Our Stars or whatnot, because everything that happens to her really just makes the guy a better. I forgot the guy's name. I know the girl's name was Sakura, and the guy's name was something that was like relating to spring, and that's how they became friends, is because like they both had names that were related to spring. And she seems to have no flaws. Even though she's like chronically ill, she's super optimistic, she's super excited, she's super weird, she's super quirky, she's all of these things. But she doesn't, and even though there are moments where you get really deep and personal with her, where you can really relate to her and you can feel her pain, the type of optimism she has about her life, her very short life that she has left, is way beyond anything that is reasonable for someone in her position. And it's she's popular, she's got friends and stuff, but they don't know the real her. The only one that knows the real her is the guy in this story. And she keeps everything away from them and only like shows who she really is to him. And I think that that's another example of like very manic pixie-ish, where it's just like, oh, there's another side of me, is like a big thing with like the manic pixie dream girl, is like there's another side of me that's only for you. So that's the one aspect. I think that the anime waifu has replaced the manic pixie dream girl. I think another one, and I think a far more dangerous aspect, is the born sexy yesterday. What I notice with anime waifus is that they're very, very young seeming. They don't, I mean, obviously they're cartoons, so they're gonna look young. They have the big eyes, they have the thin bodies, whatever. That is like kind of adolescent like most anime characters are in high school. Um, except for like fantasy ones where there's like not really high schools or whatever. But if it's not a fantasy one, they normally are in high school. And but the thing is a lot of the girls don't act like they're in high school. They seem much younger. They have these really high pitched, squeaky voices. They have these really excited, peppy type personalities. And even the ones that are not based in high schools somehow involve like a high school uniform look to their outfit or whatnot. So I think that that's another thing that kind of alludes to the born sexy yesterday idea, where these anime waifus, even though some of them might be adults or older teenagers, they have very childlike innocence to them. And while it makes it relatable for people like me who want to remember what it's like when times were so much simpler, I think it puts this idea in the male audience's mind that if a girl is young and innocent, I'm going to be the best thing she'll ever know. I don't have to improve myself much because she's already going to be in love with me and obsessed with me and do everything for me. And I think that that's where a big danger comes in, that a lot of guys get this idea in their head where they want the anime waifu. But that's not, good for any girl that they're with, and that's not good for themselves either, because if there's no progress, if you're not having to, better yourself and all of these things, and you just are with this girl that just is absolutely obsessed with you and loves you for who you are and doesn't want you to change. um Even if you do find someone like that, even if you do find a girl like that who just absolutely adores the crap out of you, eventually she's going to get older. If you aren't changing, she's going to want to move on. And I think it puts kind of that unrealistic expectation in a lot of guys' eyes. I think it puts a lot of expectation on a girl herself. And I'm not saying that it's any different with like the husbando, but I in no way actually really, even though I like whatever, like Bon or like Bakugo or whatever, I would never ever want to actually be in a relationship with a guy like that. I like I guess the idea of it. I like the novelty of it, but I would never, want to be with someone who like verbally abuses me the way, Bakugo does. I would never want someone who is just like so stuck up in like this senpai type role that like, and I say never, even though I have been in relationships like that. But I, even though these are like fictional characters, I still know that, like, that's not what I really want. However, I think with a lot of waifus, that is what they want, that is what they're looking for, that is what they're expecting. And it kind of like sets them up for disappointment. I think so that's another thing. And I think the third thing that I really want to touch on with the danger of anime waifus is that because it does come from Japanese culture, which is very, very different from American culture, the negative parts and old-fashioned parts of Japanese culture and anime culture of when things were not so progressive, things were a little bit more misogynistic, that kind of gets those ideals kind of get into people's heads. I know someone talked about like the danger of nostalgia, where when you watch things that were less progressive, movies that were from another time, it's just like, it's almost like you're accepting those behaviors, that they seem not as bad when you watch it because that's how things really were. And things weren't, those things that are considered bad now, they weren't considered bad then. And I think it's a very similar with a lot of anime shows. And there are a lot of anime shows that are very progressive and very forward thinking. But there are a lot of them that are kind of old fashioned, and some of them that are actually quite misogynistic and have misogynistic undertones. I do think that Rise of the Shield Hero, while it's a good anime, it has some very misogynistic undertones towards women. That women in power are just going to take advantage of you. I don't see a lot of animes where there's women who are in power that are not villains. That's very, very rare. Normally girls that are in power, women that are in power in anime, they take advantage of people, of the guy or whatever. And I think that Shield Hero is an example of something that it does happen, but it's so often, yes, it does happen. And I think it became popular in the US around the same time that Amber Heard had made false allegations against Johnny Depp, which kind of like opened up this whole idea that like, oh, are girls just making it up? And it's hard because I got raped around that time and people didn't believe me, because not only because of Rise of the Shield Hero being popularized, but also the allegations that Amber Heard made against Johnny Depp. And it kind of put this idea in our heads that like, oh, these women, that like, this is just what women do, that's just who they are. And it put that idea in people's heads that really that's not the norm. Normally that doesn't happen. It did happen in this story. It did happen um in this, place where, something was made up about him, and because it was made up about him, he lost everything. And that does happen in real life too, but it not to the extent of like girls actually getting raped, or and I do think that there's a lot of animes that kind of like they put sexual assault in a context that it really shouldn't be. I see that there's a lot of animes that, show sexual assault, not that they glamorize it, not that they romanticize it, and they don't necessarily say it's a good thing, but they put it in a context where it doesn't seem as bad as it should be. I remember there's this part in Kakaguri where Yumiko almost gets gang raped by a bunch of guys, and it almost seems like she wanted it. They kind of make it seem that way, and even though she does get saved by someone, and it kind of gets blown off like, well, what makes you say I didn't want that or whatever. And I think I notice a lot of that in anime, where that's kind of the attitude that people have about rape in anime, is that like either she's making it up, or she kind of wanted it, or if anything, if there's like rape shown in anime, it's just again to further progress the male story, because a guy will catch someone and he'll stop it, and it makes him seem like this big hero, rather than going through like what the girl's development and how she reacted to it and how it grows her. So that's just kind of my thoughts on it. I think that I still love anime, obviously, but it doesn't really affect my life and my, expectations for real life, but I do know for a lot of people it does. And I think it puts this idea in our head where I think, most adults, they don't really, expect those things in a relationship that they would see in anime. I think like most people are like old enough to, see reality. Um, but I think kind of in a weird way has these undertones that like send subliminal messages to our mind of what we're supposed to think is the ideal woman, which actually is not the ideal woman. The ideal woman should be someone who's matured, someone who has experience. Yes, there is something somewhat charming about an innocent girl who's just figuring stuff out and has no idea what the fuck she's doing. There is a level of charm to that. Um, but it should not be the goal. The goal is to keep learning, keep moving forward, and keep experiencing and finding someone who is moving forward with you, who's doing that with you. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. If you don't disagree, I don't fucking care. But that's my 2 cents. I'm not saying, oh my gosh, but I could only be right. That's just what I think and what I've seen and what I've experienced. But you can have your own opinion. So, yeah, that's me. I'm Ivy, and bye!